Looking at my dad's bank account, I found almost $600 million there. This money is all mine now, I realized. I need no more of you. I was still in mourning after my loving father-in-law passed away when my husband came to me and casually announced he wanted a divorce. As it happens, he was only displaying his actual colors until he acquired the $600 million inheritance from his father. He considered me as nothing more than an ATM, ready for Dad to die so he may live a luxurious life free from employment. Though I had seen flashes of his actual character previously, I never understood he was this horrible. I was clenching my hands before I knew it, furious at myself for being duped into this marriage. While I could forgive being misled, I couldn't bear him disparaging my gentle father-in-law. "Fine," I replied. "Hand me those divorce papers." I grabbed the papers from my husband, fast-signed them, and tossed them back at him. I said, "All right, the rest is up to you." "Yeah, leave it to me," he boasted. I passed him out of the living room and left the house. He promised to mail my stuff. I knew my spouse would be sorry about divorcing me. Sure enough, he phoned me later and panicked when I told him the $600 million was only a fiction. "She's Mary, working in sales. I am 45 years old. John, my spouse, is 45 as well and used to work in sales. Today he stays at home. He became a homemaker for a reason, but to explain that, I should start with my first husband. My second marriage is this one. 5 years ago, a work accident claimed the first spouse, leaving me a widow. Between severance pay and life insurance, I came upon almost $600,000. My first marriage took place later in my 30s, hence we had no children. Along with my ex-in-laws, I inherited the money, but they advised me, we're almost 82 years old and don't have much time left, so we don't need it. Unable to accept it, I decided to donate the money to my ex-brother-in-law and his wife, who resided with my ex-in-laws. Still, they also remarked, we don't need much since it was money belonging to my brother. You ought to apply it. They therefore only grabbed a meager share of the funds. Ultimately, most of the money came back to me after paying a substantial inheritance tax bill. By the time I was 41, combined with our savings and the fact I worked, I was really wealthy. Still, I felt hollow sitting by myself at home staring at the figures in my bank account. Nobody was there when I returned from work, and none ever will be. The bed next me stayed just as it had been when I turned in for sleep. The worst of it was unintentionally making breakfast for two. I considered, this must be what it feels like to have a hole in your heart as I bit the second piece of toast. I had to keep working, so even though I really wanted to take some time off, I returned to my job with emptiness inside me. Feeling a great void all the time, I yearned for someone, anyone, to listen to me. Someone turned out to be my present hubby. He remarked, "I'm sorry for any inconvenience," when I told him about my spouse dying and how I had to take some time off because of it. I answered fast, No, it was hardly at all inconvenient. Apart from that, your husband was a lucky man to have someone looking after him so thoroughly. He must have been really delighted." Then he spoke somewhat about himself, stating, "Regarding me, I'm horrible in relationships. I get dumped fast even when I do date someone. I know it's due to my negligent attitude, but changing who you are seems difficult. Before we developed closer, my husband and I were business friends. Knowing he was a happy person, I found myself chatting to him everything when I visited his business. Usually anyone would find such a depressing and weighty narrative off-putting, yet he listened silently and then made light-hearted jokes to help me to relax. His words and grin appeared to cover some of the hole in my heart. He kept listening to my experiences, and we began to meet away from the office. I unintentionally dropped a receipt one day while we were chatting, and he laughed, saying, "Wow, my wallet is twice as fat with coins. You dropped a receipts." We started laughing together. I need to organize it, but it's such a hassle. Pulling some cash caused receipts to fall out as he went to pay at a store. After I gathered up the receipts and returned them to him, he jammed them back into his wallet, grumbling over the coins. I said, teasing, "You're like a kid." "Whither?" "45, you know," he answered. He was a touch reckless, as he indicated, but seeing him helped me feel the hole in my heart gradually close. We continued to meet in secret. A year later, he confided in me he had feelings for me. I was conflicted since my former husband died just 1 year ago, but I felt as though my late spouse was advising me, "Don't stay stuck, go forward." I then made the decision to begin seeing John. Though everyone around us had different ideas, making that crucial decision started me to recover. But just 1 month later, John raised even more questions and urged me to make a very crucial decision. Shouldn't we be married? Our age makes it wiser to make decisions sooner rather than later. This time I overlooked the voice leading from my late husband. I chose to wed John since he seemed to be advising me to rely on my own intuition and keep on forward. "Okay, let's get married," I said, startled even by how fast I decided on it. Presumably, John's personality was rubbing off on me. I began to consider that, if it would increase my positivity, a little carelessness wasn't so bad. John also taught me at the same time that too much carelessness could be troublesome. "Wait, live with your dad?" I questioned. "Yeah, he lately became ill and needed assistance with daily activities. Thinking he was still youthful, he continued to work till 73. Now this is happening." "And what about your mother? Is she assisting him?" "Wonderful. Not once I mentioned it. Mom is not here right now. When I was little, my parents separated. I haven't seen her since." This is the first I am learning about. Apologetic, not enraged, but it's a delicate subject to bring up since we weren't convinced about getting married yet. I considered telling you later. You could have told me about your parents even if you pushed off discussing living together. I would have recognized that living together may be a choice. Let's not stress over the little details, though. Just meet my dad, then determine whether you would be comfortable living with him. And if I say I cannot live with him, we'll sort it out then." John grinned. I could not, however, grin back. "I'm not going to declare I want not to live with you simply because I want not to be married. I only wish he had previously informed me the crucial points. Though I now know it's not a good thing after all, I believed being lazy was not that bad. In the end, I consented to meet his father as John advised. Then I started to get his meaning about little details. "Your house is rather big," I said. "Just a little. We have some spare rooms. It's only Dad and myself. You can use any of the extra rooms after you move in," John said. I was a bit shy since I was about to meet his dad for the first time. John opened the gate and headed for the front door, discounting my emotions. 3 floors tall, his house was somewhat larger than that of the neighbors. Living there with just the 2 of them looked rather luxurious. That's what I assumed, but John didn't appear unhappy. "Dad is really frugal. He should have built a larger house," he said to himself. But meeting his dad to verify what he stated made me too anxious. "Dad," I carried her, John added. "This is Mary," I exclaimed. "Sorry to greet you from bed. It's been hard to move lately," his father said. "Please don't strain yourself," I urged. John's father stood up with John's assistance. He seemed able to get up and walk slowly with some support so he could manage with some assistance. He was not bedridden. Though he had physical problems, his father seemed more intelligent than I would have thought. "So, Mary, you work in sales for office supplies. Selling the hardware gets more difficult with the shift to paperless offices, right?" asked his dad. "Yes, industry-wide equipment sales have been declining for about 11 years. Everyone is focusing on new services or business expansion," I said. "You should look at nations where the home market for the equipment is virtually saturated, since it is almost saturated here." Demand for fresh services exists still. One could choose to proceed with IT integration. Surely there is anything known as MPS, he stated. Totally forgot I was speaking with my future father-in-law. Turned to work mode since the discussion inevitably led into work discourse. His father was most likely being sensitive of my emotions. He did not press too hard on the marriage issue either. Just a few minutes of conversation turned me from disrespecting him to respecting him. I began to see why John labeled living with his dad little matters. He most likely knew I wouldn't object. About 30 minutes into our talk, his father remarked, "My back's starting to hurt. I'm sorry to cut this short, Mary, but I have to relax. Kindly attend to John. He is such a chatty person." Sure. Is sure the right response? I asked back. His father seemed to abruptly off the discussion to save me some trouble. Though I wanted to chat more, I wanted to avoid draining him. A little let down, I headed off with John. John mentioned his dad more on the way back. "Dad's a serial entrepreneur," John declared. "A serial what?" I questioned. "Serial entrepreneur. He founded businesses, expanded them, then sold them. He has done it several times," John clarified. "You can just buy and sell businesses like that?" I was startled. Yes, indeed. Selling one business can net millions of dollars. Starting and running a business also requires a lot of money, hence the sale is not entirely profit. Still, Dad is rather rich. Simply said, he hates to spend. Dad prefers not to spend money. John could create a mansion that would cause jaws to drop. "Do you know much about his work?" I asked. "He talks hardly about money or employment. He never taught me how to make money or hired me for his businesses. He rewards me only by living at home. If he's got so much money, he could spoil me a little more. Don't you think?" John shot back, "Your dad probably has his reasons." "He seems to be a really remarkable man," I said. John could feel overwhelmed by him, thus it made logical. Given how wonderful his father is, John undoubtedly got compared to him a lot, so it's logical that he'd have some issues. "Why, by the way, did your mother leave? Your dad looks really nice. It's difficult to envision their marriage failing." "Mom sought an easy life and spent a lot of money. After the divorce, people mainly came after Dad's money, so he determined never to marry again. He focused on work instead. With that much of money, he could have spent a little, don't you think?" John shot back, "I don't believe in spending money just because you have it." I couldn't agree with John on this since, from what he told me, it seemed his mother depended on his father's money. But I believe his comments resulted from feelings of inadequacy relative to his father. John and I later discussed living with his father. Currently, his father depends on John for support and also gets help from a housekeeper when John is at work. I assumed my husband and I would keep working while my house assistant helped to look after my father-in-law. John startled me, though, with another notion. "I want to take care of Dad and quit my job," John stated. "What? Get off your employment?" I was startled. Dad is quite an amazing person, right? From now on, I want to help him without depending on a carer, as I believe I haven't done anything for him all this time. I'll be like a homemaker," John explained. "I'll handle the house, too," John said. "Are you sure you won't regret quitting your job?" I requested. "I would regret not doing more for Dad." With a little smile, he said, "I can go back to work after he's gone." I said, frightened, "That joke isn't funny." Though it ended out otherwise, I had assumed my husband would be resentful of his father. He truly loved his dad in spite of all. "You better handle the housework if you're going to be a homemaker," I cautioned. "Leave it to me," John responded, puffing out his chest proudly. I left the housework to my husband since my father-in-law would pay his own bills and my income would be plenty for the two of us. Everything went according when we were married and started sharing a house. I worked and John took care of the house. He helped his dad, handled the budget, and divided the housework. He would say, "You're tired from work. I'll handle the house stuff. You rest," when I tried to be helpful. Still friendly, my father-in-law told me many insightful tales. Our second marriage was going well. However, I noticed that my father-in-law would sometimes frown when he saw John doing housework. A month after we started living together, John began slacking off with the house tasks. "You are once more asleep on the couch. You hadn't been there all day, though," I queried. "Nope," trying to justify himself, John stated. "I went to the toilet too, and to the refrigerator when I was thirsty." "That is not what I mean. What about dinner? Have you lately gone grocery shopping?" I saw it. "Dining's ready. Don't worry," he said. I looked across to the kitchen, but there was no cooking visible. On the dining table, I found just an empty jar. He obviously had been sloth all day. From this, I knew what John meant by "dinner's ready." Just perfect moment. The intercom rang, John grabbed his money and went to the door. Too astonished to speak, I said nothing. For the first 3 weeks, John had only taken careful care of the house. He then progressively quit doing anything, and I ended up cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry. Someone with a careless attitude usually starts strong and then rapidly slacks off. Not expecting this, caught in the thrill of marriage. On the other hand, my father-in-law had to have foreseen it early on, hence he scowled when he saw John cleaning. My father-in-law started apologizing to me as my husband started neglecting his responsibilities. "That lad is really rather reckless. I truly apologize, Mary. After being married, I expected he would grow more responsible, but it appears he is only troublemaker. Feel free to kick him out should he start to be a burden." "I honestly wouldn't do that. It is good. I apologize." I tried to correct him, but he's just, "Well, you know." "It's fine, but he isn't neglecting to help you, right?" I probed. "No, he does help me at least a little," I answered, noting a small change in the look of my father-in-law. John obviously wasn't totally neglecting his father, but he also wasn't working third of the required amount. Still, my father-in-law was most likely downplaying the circumstances to keep us from fighting. I muttered, "I'm sorry." With just one word, "Sorry," me father-in-law answered, "No, Mary, you don't need to apologize." He appeared to know how I felt. We both apologized, and there was a bit of discomfort between us. My father-in-law swiftly switched the topic with a happier tone to help to release the tension. "Oh, I need your help. I'm planning my end of life." John seemed to me not handling it with confidence. "Planning for your end of life. It is less negative than it sounds. I simply want to steer clear of any problems down road." I understood. Should there be anything I could do, I would be pleased to assist. Discussing John made us both wary, so we avoided housework and conversations about him. Though there were some kind gestures that delighted me, it was an awkward approach of showing consideration. "Is there anything inconvenient at home?" my in-law questioned. "Not really, but the bathroom might use some fixing." "I had just wanted the water heater checked," I said, but my casual comment developed into something far greater. "Wait, what's this?" When I found the modifications, I cried. The bathroom was totally remodeled by a contractor my father-in-law knew. Not only were the tub and shower replaced, but the walls and floors were redone with special coatings to prevent filth, and the drain was modified to make cleaning easier. To enable my father-in-law in and out effortlessly, they even put in place a bath lift. "Now I can enjoy a neat, clean bath, and it's easier for me to get in and out," he remarked. He stated it was a lavish expenditure of funds. This occurred several times where a minor request became a major upgrade. "You better handle the housework if you're going to be a homemaker," I cautioned. "Leave it to me," John responded, puffing out his chest proudly. I left the housework to my husband since my father-in-law would pay his own bills and my income would be plenty for the two of us. Everything went according when we were married and started sharing a house. I worked, and John took care of the house. He helped his dad handle the budget and divided the housework. He would say, "You're tired from work. I'll handle the house stuff. You rest," when I tried to be helpful. Still friendly, my father-in-law told me many insightful tales. Our second marriage was going well. However, I noticed that my father-in-law would sometimes frown when he saw John doing housework. A month after we started living together, John began slacking off with the house tasks. "You are once more asleep on the couch. You haven't been there all day, though?" I queried. "Nope," trying to justify himself. John stated, "I went to the toilet too, and to the refrigerator when I was thirsty." "That is not what I mean." "What about dinner? Have you lately gone grocery shopping?" I sought. "Dining's ready, don't worry," he said. I looked across to the kitchen, but there was no cooking visible. On the dining table, I found just an empty jar. He obviously had been sloth all day. From this, I knew what John meant by "dinner's ready." Just perfect moment. The intercom rang. John grabbed his money and went to the door. Too astonished to speak, I said nothing. For the first 3 weeks, John had only taken careful care of the house. He then progressively quit doing anything, and I ended up cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry. Someone with a careless attitude usually starts strong and then rapidly slacks off. Not expecting this, caught in the thrill of marriage. On the other hand, my father-in-law had to have foreseen it early on, hence he scowled when he saw John cleaning. My father-in-law started apologizing to me as my husband started neglecting his responsibilities. "That lad is really rather reckless." I truly apologize, Mary. After being married, I expected he would grow more responsible, but it appears he is only troublemaker. Feel free to kick him out should he start to be a burden. I honestly wouldn't do that. It is good. I apologize. I tried to correct him, but he's just, "Well, you know." "It's fine, but he isn't neglecting to help you, right?" I probed. "No, he does help me at least a little," I answered, noting a small change in the look of my father-in-law. John obviously wasn't totally neglecting his father, but he also wasn't working third of the required amount. Still, my father-in-law was most likely downplaying the circumstances to keep us from fighting. I muttered, "I'm sorry." With just one word, "Sorry," me father-in-law answered, "No, Mary, you don't need to apologize." He appeared to know how I felt. We both apologized, and there was a bit of discomfort between us. My father-in-law swiftly switched the topic with a happier tone to help to release the tension. "Oh, I need your help. I'm planning my end of life." John seemed to me not handling it with confidence. "Planning for your end of life? It is less negative than it sounds. I simply want to steer clear of any problems down road." I understood. Should there be anything I could do, I would be pleased to assist. Discussing John made us both wary, so we avoided housework and conversations about him. Though there were some kind gestures that delighted me, it was an awkward approach of showing consideration. "Is there anything inconvenient at home?" my in-law questioned. "Not really, but the bathroom might use some fixing." I had just wanted the water heater checked, I said, but my casual comment developed into something far greater. "Wait, what's this?" When I found the modifications, I cried. The bathroom was totally remodeled by a contractor my father-in-law knew. Not only were the tub and shower replaced, but the walls and floors were redone with special coatings to prevent filth, and the drain was modified to make cleaning easier. To enable my father-in-law in and out effortlessly, they even put in place a bath lift. "Now I can enjoy a neat, clean bath, and it's easier for me to get in and out," he remarked. He stated it was a lavish expenditure of funds. This occurred several times where a minor request became a major upgrade. My husband will soon regret divorcing me. That $600 million was simply fantasy. A few days later, my ex-husband called while staying at a hotel searching for a new place to live. "Hey, what the hell did you do?" he asked. I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear as he started shouting. He seemed perplexed, thus I had to clarify what was going on. I can guess what happened, but why don't you tell me? I asked quietly. They claimed this money cannot be taken out of Dad's account when I sought to withdraw. What's going on? That should be $600 million in there, he said, his voice tinged with irritation. Looks like you were ignorant. Since your dad didn't spoil you, you never took an interest in his affairs, right? And he never brought up his work with you. Stop with the riddles. There's money, right? He demanded. Yes, there's $600 million, but it's collateral, so you can't touch it, I said. His voice faltering, he asked, Collateral? That's right. Though untouchable, like a pie in the sky, the money is in the account. Furthermore, that money is about to be utilized to pay off debt, hence it will be gone shortly, I said. You're kidding. With $600 million, I am unable to use any of it. As he began to falter, his voice got softer. Since I assisted with the end-off life plans for my father-in-law, I knew about the $600 million being collateral. Should something happen to him, he had requested me to manage affairs. I was supposed to pay his obligations with the $600 million he left behind. But I left the papers to my ex, urging him to handle the remainder because he abruptly insisted on a divorce. What did Dad do with the $600 million? My ex questioned. I shot back. He used it for something he loved. Confused, what does that mean? He inquired. Dad decided his next job would be his last and utilized his funds for something he loved, that seafood processing and distribution company in Germany he always talked about, at over 72. He trusted the management to locals and hoped to enjoy his retirement here, but it was a major flop, and he lost practically everything. Laughing, he said it was only natural as he did it without any actual knowledge. Regarding where he spent his money launching that company, he had no regrets. Using his reserves as collateral, he borrowed $600 million, but it became debt. He therefore intended to make it back off with another employment. Though it looked unlikely, he did not think so. He kept enough for retirement even with the debt. It's amazing in the environment we live in today, where many battle into retirement. But his health deteriorated as he worked on organizing the Germany company. He renegotiated his payback schedule with the bank at that point. Considering his extensive record of high-value deals, they trusted him. Tell them, he said, take the collateral if I can't work anymore. They decided on a 2-year grace period whereby, should he be unable to work, the debt would be paid off using the collateral. That year is gone. Now is the time to pay off the loan. My ex asked, his voice full of disbelief, so this $600 million is debt repayment money and will soon be zero. Indeed. Was another bank account found by you? One ought to be for living expenses. Yeah, I came upon one with $80,000 in it. That is free money you can spend. That's your inheritance. $600 million became $80,000. Why did he not get ready better for his retirement? Clearly shocked, my ex asked questions. The $80,000 startled me too, but given him, he most likely intended to add more if necessary. He looked to be able of anything. And you seem to have not yet checked the will. My ex told me Dad would leave me approximately 20%. We are divorcing. You could object as it would violate your legitimate inheritance. But I'd like to honor his wishes. Observing he was breathing heavily, I replied, I hope you'll agree to the 20%. He had expected to collect $600 million, but the sum kept declining. Today he was frightened. Why had he squandered so much money? With $600 million he could have bought anything. My ex screamed, annoyed. Yelling at me won't make any difference. He had no regrets as he was most happy talking about that period. It was his money, which he spent. He intended to pay back the debt himself, hence nobody could object. You just jumped to judgments and got ahead of yourselves, I said. Why are you so afraid? I asked. I spent all of my own money since I honestly expected to win $600 million. I have empty account, he said. What? Serious? I startled myself. My ex-husband had been squandering money he hardly had yet. He was unemployed right now and couldn't depend on my savings anymore because we were divorced. I knew at last the reason he was so terrified. Still, you have a house and a roof over your head so you could reconstruct your life, right? I said. I have just a tiny savings and am almost 54 without job. To what extent will I be affected? Please assist me, he asked. You do have savings and a job, right? Why should I support a former spouse? You are paying for your own mistakes, I remarked with firmness. Kindly, let us imagine the divorce never took place, he pleaded. I hung off the phone, nevertheless, disregarded his calls. Clearly, a careless attitude is not a positive one. That in mind, I returned to perusing property listings. My ex-husband did surprisingly follow through with the will and provide me $40,000 from the inheritance of my father-in-law. That balanced the money he had taken from me. After handling the $600 million scenario, he most likely felt it was too much effort to worry over $40,000. He supposedly began working in sales once more as well, but he didn't seem to be treating it seriously. Not getting the $600 million damaged his drive, which caused regular errors. Comparatively to the $600 million he missed, he saw his paycheck and lost drive after a month of suffering under the scolding of younger bosses. After just 1 month, he left and is now a part-time worker, barely making enough to cover expenses. That means, though, his $600,000 savings will not grow. Actually, it would most likely drop. I doubt whether he is considering his retirement. Well, I'm not worried about whatever problems he finds now. He will have to labor hard. No ATM exists for him anymore. Starting on my own, I leased a little condo. I transferred the $40,000 from my father-in-law into my bank account. I don't intend to spend it since I treat it as sort of talisman. Seeing it in the account inspires me since it seems as though I am carrying some of the work attitude of my father-in-law. I shall get strength from him today and try my best at work.